I never was a fan of the best of type videos. To me, they're kind of gimmicky, and really, if you've only listened to a few different speakers, how can you say it's the best speaker in X category? In the last 2.5 years, however, I reviewed about 150 different speakers. Out of that, I'd say about 25 to 30 or so are in the budget category, meaning about $500 or less per pair. So I thought, you know what? Heck, I've got enough time. I've got enough resources. I've done this thing. So let me give you my opinion on what I feel are my top speakers in the budget category. In this video, I'm not going to throw a lot of data at you. I've done full reviews for all these speakers, and you can find them in the link below. So what I'm going to do is go through these kind of quick, just to give you a heads up on what I've learned and what I like in the past 2.5 years. First is going to be the Neewer BS5 at retail for about $110 per pair from Amazon. The Neewer BS5 presents a speaker that has reasonable linearity. It comes ported with front ports, although you can stuff those ports with a sock or something like that. I do recommend you do that. Why? Because when you do, it gets rid of some port resonance and creates a more smooth response. But there is a bit of a difference between the mid and the upper mid-range response by about 2 dB. The soundstage is nice and wide, but not too wide. What do I mean? It's about plus or minus 60 degrees. So you will have some room involvement, but you won't have a whole lot of room involvement. Not like you might with a tweeter that has plus or minus 90 degrees dispersion, where it's going to touch every wall in that room. However, like most speakers on this list, they are output limited and they don't get down very low, nor do they get very loud. So you will want to use a subwoofer to help alleviate some of the low bass distortion and provide you with the low bass impact that you're going to be looking for. Next up on the list is the Polk XT20. Retails for about $225 per pair. The Polk XT20 is actually a really surprisingly good speaker. It has really good linearity and it has really good directivity, which means that it is a great speaker for home theater use and for home audio use. It can be EQ'd to taste just as much as you like, or you can listen to it out of the box without much issue. With 86 dB sensitivity, it is fairly easy to drive, so most AVRs should be able to handle this speaker just fine. It does have a little bit of a bump in the top end and the treble, so you may find that turning them off axis helps. The soundstage width isn't quite as wide as the Neewer. It's a little bit more narrow, but depending on your room, you may find that something that you enjoy. This has decent output, but does need a subwoofer as well. The Emotiva B1 Plus at $250 per pair. Another really good speaker with really good linearity and good directivity control out of the box, which means that as you hand off from the low, mid to high frequencies, it's very smooth. Decent sensitivity at about 85 dB, which is pretty much the target range for most bookshelf speakers. The soundstage radiation is also at about plus or minus 60 degrees. So again, it's somewhat wide, but not too wide and not too narrow. 60 degrees to 70 degrees is kind of my personal sweet spot. You will want a subwoofer to provide you with bass extension, but it does have pretty decent output as well. So most home theater setups in a smaller room are going to be just fine with this speaker, or you can use it as a surround speaker. The ELAC DB62 at $300 per pair. Again, another very neutral speaker for its price especially. Does have a couple things that I'll address. There's a resonance around 700 Hertz that is audible, but may not take away from the music too much depending on if the music you have hits that note. That's a hard one to determine, but I will say most people probably won't be too annoyed by it. The thing, though, that did somewhat bother me was that there was a high frequency glare in the 4 to 6 kilohertz region. Those two issues, though, are the only problems that I had with this speaker. It does take very well to EQ, so you can knock down that glare and you can knock down that 700 hertz resonance. Use these in a home theater setting with a subwoofer and you'll be good to go. Or listen near field without a subwoofer and you'll have enough bass extension that might satisfy your needs, but it won't get down to the kick drum area of about 50 hertz in most rooms. Wharfdale 12.1 diamond speaker at $349 per pair. This is a speaker that is more to my liking in terms of neutrality. However, it has a BBC dip from about 2 to 4 kilohertz, which is going to take away some of the attack and some of the dynamicism of some tracks that you may listen to. I would describe the speaker overall as mellow, but on the flip side, it is a very non-fatiguing speaker. So you can just sit back and listen to music for hours without being bothered, like you might with some speakers that have a tilted top end. We'll talk about those shortly. Soundstage radiation is the same at about plus or minus 60 degrees. The one drawback about this speaker is that it just doesn't have the dynamic range that some of the other speakers have. And to wrap it up, the Cali LP6 V2 at $400 per pair. Comes with a built-in amplifier and it has a very neutral and accurate sound to it. It has a lot of dip switch settings on the back, so you can change it to your liking if you want to adjust the bass or the treble, or tweak it for a desk situation or free wall standing in your room. The good thing about this speaker is that it has extension to about 40 hertz in most rooms, which is going to give you enough of that kick drum bass that you'll feel happy with without probably needing to buy a subwoofer. However, since it is a power speaker, it may not fit your needs. Now, the one downside of this speaker is that it does have a limiter built in to keep the excursion in check. So it won't have high distortion, but it will have a limiter that will check the volume. I would say that you're going to be okay into the about 90 dB region for a pair of speakers about 3 meters away in your room. Now, if you're trying to listen to these speakers very, very loudly, the limiter is going to kick in and it's going to keep the output from growing in the lower bass. And speakers that I would avoid. Anything by Yamo currently. I know there's a ton of you probably watching this. I love Yamo. Well, the problem with the Yamo speakers, generally speaking, because I've tested a few different ones over different models in the budget area, they have a mid-range scoop and they are very bright. That's the problem. It doesn't really matter what you do. Yes, they can be EQ'd down to some degree, but you have to do so much EQ that I wouldn't trust a standard AVR to be able to correct these speakers to provide you with a neutral sound. Now, if for some reason you find that you don't like neutral and you classify bright as detailed, which I would not, then hey, go ahead and knock your socks off. But if you're looking for a accurate speaker or something that's closer to neutral and accurate, then the Yamo speakers that I've reviewed thus far, SO832, C93-2, SO7. Based off of those, I cannot recommend anything that Yamo currently makes. JBL Stage is another speaker that a lot of people enjoy, the A120 and the A130. I personally would not recommend those either because of my own experiences with them. And that's it. Told you it was going to be quick. If you like this video, please like, thumbs up, all that good stuff, and hit the subscribe if you haven't already. If you are not a Patreon and you would like to join to help this channel out and help me do what I'm doing and continue to grow, that would be great. Follow the link in the description below. With all of that said, I appreciate you watching and I hope you learned something. If you take my advice and buy one of these speakers, I do encourage you to buy them from a retailer that will allow you to return them if you don't like them, because who knows, maybe you'll get them in and you just won't like them, or maybe you want to try 2 or 3 different ones to see which ones fit your own needs better. Great. If you want to find out more about these speakers, please watch the full complete videos for review. And with that said, I'm out. Talk to y'all later. Peace.